Hi, and welcome to webinar 50. Sorry we missed you on the Zoom as we were having technical difficulties earlier, but that won't deter us from hosting the Zoom to get you guys that useful information, specifically regarding frames and their potential. Now, if you were here last week or you saw our previous videos, you would know that this kind of sounds familiar, and that's because last week or I would say the last webinar, we explored stylized frames that we introduced to our website recently, specifically for the canvas and framed wall art. And there we kind of did a dive into the latest products and specifically framing that we had, offering different style selections and recommendations per stylized frame. This week, though, we're going to explore more about the psychology of framed art and how that interacts with your art and in turn the customer's perception of your art. I will say that, while we're having this discussion, it is primarily about selling art and also leveraging your art to your customers. So please don't be deterred if you have success in selling unframed art. Here, we just want to explore the benefits and really the potential when it comes to adding frames to your art and how that might add perceived value and thus forth. It doesn't necessarily mean that unframed art is seen as less, but it is all part of strategic pricing and strategic selling. So with that, we can carry on into the video. Understanding buyer psychology around framing when buyers are looking for art in online shopping, for example, they're usually evaluating not just the image, but subconsciously they're also assessing how the entire piece aligns with their style, their space, and their sense of value. Psychologically speaking, shoppers are looking for three things. They're looking for visual harmony, emotional connection, and decor compatibility. A frame that complements the artwork in texture, color, and proportion creates an instant sense of cohesion, which I would say makes the piece feel more intentional and even more high quality. Buyers who use frames tend to gauge whether the art will fit seamlessly into their home. For example, clean, neutral frames signal versatility and oftentimes favored in modern and minimalistic spaces. And then when it comes to more ornate or rustic frames, they usually attract those who have a more defined aesthetic and aesthetic taste specifically. Importantly, I would say framed art does reduce that uncertainty when customers are shopping online. It shows exactly how the piece will look on their wall, making them feel like a low risk, high reward purchase. Sellers who anticipate these needs by offering curated frame options and lifestyle mockups can more effectively tap into buyers' motivation and increase both trust and conversion. How frame choice influences perceived value and home decor compatibility. I will say that frame choice often plays a powerful role in shaping how buyers perceive both value of an art piece and how it fits within their home. A well-chosen frame signals that the piece is complete, premium, and thoughtful, curated with traits that evaluate its perceived worth. Buyers are most likely to justify a higher price point if the art feels gallery ready. From a home decor's perspective, the frame acts as a sort of visual bridge between the art and the buyer's interior style. A good example would be a sleek black or white frame to suggest modernity and flexibility, whereas a more rustic or gold frame connects with traditionality and also farmhouse aesthetics. When frame echoes the tones and materials already present in a buyer's space, it creates a more amplified compatibility, making the artwork feel like it was made for their home. I would say it's best to think of frames as the intermediary between your art and the buyer's home decor, a bridge as previously discussed. By aligning frames with both the art style and the home environment, you as a seller can increase the emotional resonance, the buyer's hesitations will be reduced, and it'll also drive more confident purchases in your store. And then when it comes to, I would say, the visual impact as well as the emotional impact of a well-framed piece, I think goes a bit more than just enhancing the aesthetics, but it also creates a connection that I would say influences the buyer's behavior. Psychologically speaking, people associate frames with care, permanence, and professionalism. This emotion signals what the artwork feels as more valuable, more meaningful, which might increase the likelihood of a buyer forming a personal attachment with the art piece. Visually, the frame serves as a focal boundary and it will elevate the presentation. Kind of think of it as just honing in on your art piece and not having it washed out, say, with a similar color background. It guides the viewer's attention, I would say, to a more amplified mood or message with the piece. And whether it's a minimalist black frame that adds modern elegance or a textured wood frame that evokes a sort of warmth, the right frame reinforces the buyer's aesthetic and helps them picture their artwork in their own space. By combining emotional resonance with visual clarity, a well-framed print becomes more than just art. It becomes a piece of decor that's ready to be in the buyer's home and easy for them to commit to. And now, if we were to go into the framing psychology and how frames influence perceived value, let me just kind of reinforce what I said previously. This is kind of talking about selling factor and perception of the customer when it comes to interacting with your art. This by no means says that it is less or better than without frame or unframed. I would say it's just how you strategically build your store to, I would say, leverage it to a specific customer group. So, with that being said, I will say that when it comes to first impressions, people make a quick judgment within seconds of your art, and sometimes framing can also be one of the first things a viewer notices. A well-chosen frame communicates professionalism, it communicates polishness, and also care that could help elevate the perceived value of the piece overall. This visual cue often helps buyers classify an artwork as quote unquote premium or even quote unquote collectible before they engage with the art subject at hand. I think that this might tie into the halo effect, where very impressive presentation can really influence what we perceive what's within the contents of that frame, for example. A frame print can suggest intentionality and completion, making the piece feel ready to display and worthy of investment. When it comes to your own art, think of it as enhancers, making your art more broadly appeal and have a greater impact when compared on its own. For example, if you ever done galleries, think of why gallery buyers, or sorry, if you ever done galleries, think of why gallery owners insist on framing. Usually it's to add value and to enhance the appearance of your art, bolstering its sell potential. And when it comes to online retail, that is simply no different, where visual impact really does drive the trust and conversion, and a strong framing presentation becomes a key factor in giving your buyer the decision of whether or not to proceed with the purchase. So, if we're going to talk about, I guess, the different ways you're going to strategically price and also leverage your art, we can talk about the difference, for example, between gallery quality or gallery aesthetic versus casual art. And let me just perceive that this is specifically about how we display our art, not that something is gallery quality or casual on art alone, but rather how we, I would say, use the materials and also the product in of itself to really hone in that aesthetic. I will say that with frames specifically, it is very subtle, but it is also a powerful tool that for positioning your art in the eye of the buyer, it could either elicit a gallery-like quality or it could be for more casual decor, both of which are very important and equally popular in the, I would say, e-commerce space. I will say that it tells the buyer that this is, when it comes to framed pieces, that it is a serious piece worth of displaying in refined spaces, and that the framing aligns with a premium pricing. It attracts customers looking for a more investment-worthy art. On the flip side, if you're going for a minimalistic frame or no frame at all, this artwork could speak to you or as the customer as more casual, accessible, a bit more trend forward, and it could appeal to a younger audience or those who are more style conscious, who value flexibility and affordability. This isn't lesser, as we previously discussed. It's a bit more like playing into what our customers' needs are. And the frame becomes a big part of that choice when it comes to the product's identity and allow the buyer or the customer to understand where the piece fits in their home and specifically lifestyle. By aligning your frame design with your brand positioning, whether it's luxury, modern, rustic, or playful, your guided perception and influence can then drive purchasing behavior by a simple glance. And then when it comes to pricing strategies, when we're talking about frame versus unframed works, I will say, I think to put it bluntly, framed artwork carries a higher perceived value, and smart pricing strategies should reflect that. When a print is framed, it feels more complete, curated, and display ready, and it justifies a higher price point. Buyers are more likely paying not just for the print, but they're also paying for the craftsmanship, the presentation, and the convenience of being able to hang this artwork as soon as they get it out the box. This taps into the mindset of premium presentation, where added framing creates value signals and supports elevated pricing. Whereas unframed prints, by contrast, offer flexibility and affordability, appealing to a more budget-conscious shopper who may prefer to choose their own frame, as an example. This contrast in presentation allows you to anchor pricing, using unframed art as an entry point and nudging buyers also to those more upgraded framed items. And it emphasizes quality when you do so, and less so as upselling, but more as being able to enhance what you already have, which is your art. And I guess now that we kind of went into the whole idea of like mentally where your customers are, what they're looking for in a product, we can then kind of just discuss at broad what each framing style might appeal to what type of art. And so if we're going to match different frames with different art styles, this is kind of a overall way to read it. But again, there is room for flexibility here. And I will say that um, these are just some ideas, but these are not the totality of what these frames potentials could be and how they can positively support your art. For classic and fine art pieces, I would highly suggest the plain gold air frame and the black concerto with gold. With both having this wide profile, it draws to 19th century European and American Impressionist traditions. Both of them add a layer of formality and a richness that I think is perfect for more traditional portraits, such as oil landscapes or historical pieces. Another thing to consider is that these do a good job of straddling between classical and modern, especially if you see home decor as it is now. People love that versatile look of blending in the old with the new. These two will definitely provide a little bit of that old, but not seemingly too aged or perhaps, over the top. These, I think, are subtle enough that they will do well by looking vintage, but not too vintage. I will say that if you match your frame choice with the artwork aesthetic, you're not just enhancing the presentation, but you're also just, again, reinforcing the value of your art in the eyes of your buyer. And if we're going to talk about more minimalistic artworks, such as abstract art, then the frame, in my opinion, or I guess what would be suggested was that it should be a bit more subtle but intentional, supporting the piece without overwhelming the overall feature. The goal is to definitely preserve the simplicity and draw attention to the shape, space, and color of your art. And I think with a very subtle or very minimalistic frame, it could do just that. I think that, for example, the maple wood is very soft and could help with complementing clean lines, neutral palettes, and blend seamlessly into Scandinavian or modern interiors. For more contrast and edge, the black mat is a great choice in that it is often considered a modern staple, especially here in the US. If you go into any people's homes, they're most likely going to have a black frame print, as an example. So there's broad appeal, but also the simplicity of the art frame is going to be very strong for those types of art pieces that have black and white or have a simple look to them. For the slim woods, whether in the black gold or the black silver, these are great because they still offer a bit of texture on the side for a little added styling, but they still remain fairly thin and also very subtle overall. I will say that they're great for adding bolstering your minimalistic art pieces or your abstract art, giving it that gallery feel, all while still not stealing the show or not weighing too heavy on your art piece, say if it's on the lighter side. I will say overall, the bottom line is that with simple frames, they give abstract and minimalistic art a space to breathe, if you will, while subtly elevating the perception and the appeal. And if we're going to go on the other side, if we want to like explore a bit more for rustic and natural themes in your art, then I will say the barnwood driftwoods are a great choice. I will say that by selecting the appropriate frame for your type of strong art that you have, that's either nature, even coastal or landscape, for example, Think that the barnwood driftwood has this natural organic texture already that will just create a harmonious backdrop, allowing for the artwork to take center stage. These frames are versatile and they can fit seamlessly into a lot of interior styles, from more farmhouse-like interiors to contemporary. I think that for the driftwood frames, they're characterized by both their gray and almost whitewashed finishes. So again, if you're thinking about coastals, as I talked in the previous webinar, a great choice for these, as well as just more serene aesthetics. Think of very minimalistic, very calming landscapes, for example, and overall other nature-themed artworks. Whether in natural wood tones or painted finishes, these frames will provide a subtle outline that defines the artwork without overwhelming it. Their understated design makes them ideal for gallery walls or standalone pieces in modern interiors. By choosing frames that mirror the textures and hues of nature, you kind of deepen the viewer's perception of the artwork and reinforce it to the thematic narrative, making each piece feel more harmonious and ready to display. And then for more temporary or graphic prints, consider the Framer's Choice Black or the Gold Vintage. Now, when it comes to contemporary or graphic prints, look no further than Framer's Choice in Black Gold or Vintage Copper. I will say that when these ones showed up, I thought they were really cool. They're very stylized and they have room for a lot of different art pieces. Just two of the things that we thought would benefit these or would look really good in these are the more contemporary or more graphic like art pieces. I will say that if you have something with high contrast or geometric shapes, these ones will bolster that kind of idea. And they also add a touch of luxury without overwhelming the artwork. For specifically the Framer's Choice Black and Gold, this is very, especially for the Framer's Choice Black and Gold, this enhances the geometric shapes and also making colors pop, and the lines will stand out a bit more with this type of frame. Whereas with the vintage copper collection, I will say that this one provides a more industrial chic look to contemporary pieces. It has a very subtle sheen that has been complemented with a brush texture. For bold abstract prints or photographic art prints with warm tones, it is a vintage that I think nods to craftsmanship and authenticity. By choosing these frames that echo both visual language and emotional tone of your contemporary or graphic artwork, you'll create a very cohesive presentation that seeks intention and helps buyers grasp at the artwork's modern appeal. And when it comes to selling frames with confidence, I think displaying the frame options and product listings is one of the ways you can help bridge the gap between browsing and buying. High quality lifestyle mockups or room settings show different frame styles will likely increase the customer's ability to visualize the space with their art piece and your art piece specifically in their room. This will help reduce their hesitation when buying and making a purchase because with the lifestyle mock-up paired with a very strong frame, you're going to have I will say, a product display that feels more real and feels like something that they can in turn imagine in their space. Be sure to also include very specific frame details. I will say with Lumaprints, we do offer some descriptors of what our frames offer and what our frames feel like, look like, as well as photos. So kind of use that as a springboard to your own product listings. Some of the things that I think is very compelling and notable about our frames is that they are very high quality. They have texture to them. They feel real. And, whenever if you ever felt our frames in real life, you'll know that they have a weightiness to them that sometimes you don't often see in other art pieces. So it's worth kind of honing in on how the quality is about these frames, and it'll do it for many of the different variants, whether you're doing for framed or even unframed. Just talk about what the side by side and the differences are between all of them. And when done right, this not only boosts the perceived value, but it also builds the buyer's trust and drives higher conversions. And I know that we talk about upselling oftentimes, but I want to just talk about it a little bit more in depth. When it comes to framing, I think that framing is not just an accessory, as oftentimes we might see it as, but it's very much a strategic enhancement that elevates the artwork's appeal and also the perceived value. By offering framed options, you provide customers with ready-to-display pieces and it saves them time and effort, making the purchase more convenient and attractive. This approach transforms framing from an optional extra into an added value feature that complements the art and aligns the buyer's desire to complete polished product. Emphasizing quality and craftsmanship of your frames, such as using premium materials and offering various styles, can further reinforce this position. By doing so, you not only enhance the customer's experience, but also justify a higher price point, ultimately boosting sales and even customer satisfaction. When it comes to social media in particular, it's worth promoting frame prints more effectively by showing them in real, relatable settings. For example, post them in lifestyle shots, before and after framing comparisons, behind the scene videos, and these help buyers visualize the product in their space and build emotional connection. On your product page, as an example, displaying multiple frame styles and zoomable photos, details like material, size, and colors make frame options easy to select and highlight benefits like ready to hang and crafted from solid wood. For email campaigns, focus on storytelling. Share how framing completes the artwork and make it a gift-ready product. Include lifestyle images here as well. Customer reviews are also something to help bolster the frames, and also limited time offers to create some urgency in your emails. By tailoring your messaging across different touch points, you can position framing as a value enhancer, boosting engagement and also conversion. And if you guys have any questions, I will say feel free to leave them in the comments below on YouTube, and I'll be sure to get back to you on those. When it comes to framing overall, there is a lot to explore, and specifically, there is a lot to consider and factor. I think you see new frames and you get really excited because you're like, oh, these are really great products. I love them. I think there is a strength in bolstering and being thoughtful about these frames. Overall, you want to make sure the frame is not only compatible with your art piece, but it is also compatible with your buyers and their aesthetics. So it's kind of a two-way item where you have to ask yourself first, is it strong with your art piece? One, and two, will your buyers be inclined to this type of frame with your art piece? That with very interesting and cool frames, or maybe some more minimalistic frames, you will find yourself opening up more customers to purchasing your art by virtue of them being able to then visualize your art into their house with a frame that I think could give them some relatability. For example, if a black frame is one of the options for your art piece, people can then in turn see that, okay, I can imagine my home with this art with a black frame because I have other pieces at home that have a black frame. There are a lot of components to consider, but nonetheless, I hope we gave you a starting introduction into it, and I look forward to seeing what you guys will do with not only our frames, but with your art and how you will cater these to your customer. I know that for the overall understanding, a lot of people debate whether or not their customers are willing to purchase such a premium product. And I will say there is no harm done in at least testing it out with a few of your products you know will do really strong with these frames. And so it's worth testing out at the very least and going for it. And I will say that once you kind of understand where your customers' importance on what product they liked and what product they lean towards, you can then build it out from there. So it is all also all about evaluation, analysis, and testing of products. But for the very least, I think it's worth exploring as a starting gauge to understand whether your customers are ready for frame fine art prints or frame fine art canvas. So with that being said, thank you for joining this webinar, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.